Hello, podcast listeners of Lawfully Creative. Today we are spending an hour with Scott Haughton, who is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Envestors Limited, based in London, a company which is at the center of the venture capital and seed investing community in the UK and in particular in London. So have a great listen to what Scott's got to say about this particular booming sector of the UK economy, and I'll be back in touch with you at the end of this podcast. I looked at your profile online, as in particular on LinkedIn, and noticed that you were heavily in Wales at the beginning of your life. Were you born there?
No, so I'm originally from Hertfordshire, which is just obviously north of London, about 20 miles north of London. But I went to Wales for university. So okay. I studied at the University College of Wales in Aberystwyth, which is a beautiful part of the world. Yeah. And then I stayed on in Aberystwyth and I did an MBA there. So I was there for 4 years.
Yes, that's what I read. And so Hertford is in Hertfordshire for the high school.
Hertford is in Hertfordshire.
Yes.
Yeah,
so right. I'm not very good with English geography because
because you're French, exactly. Yeah.
I'm French, but when I'm in the UK, I'm mostly in London. However, I like going to Way on High. Hay on Wye.
Which is actually very close to Wales.
Well, it is in
Wales. It's on the border, I think. So part of it might be.
Really?
I think it's England with England and Wales.
Well, you have to go after Hereford.
Yeah.
Which I believe is in Wales. And
no, Hereford isn't in Wales.
It's in England. Okay, fine. and then you have to take a bus which brings you to Hay on Wye.
Yeah.
Last weekend was actually.
You can drive to Hay on Wye as well.
I did, but it really just messed my back, so I never did it again. Because I usually go every July for the
festival.
Hay
on Wye festival.
I love
Indeed,
going to
the
very
nice
festival. And also they have every winter a winter weekend, which was last weekend. I didn't manage to go this year. So
fantastic.
And this jacket is actually coming from the Hay on Wye
really?
Main shop.
So is this the jacket that your listeners can't see?
Exactly, but
but it looks very nice. It's
Wales tweed. So I love Wales. So how was it actually? Is it like a pretty good university?
It's a fantastic university.
Why?
It's why? Because
Rugby?
there are 56 pubs, and there are just as many churches.
In
Aberystwyth. I think it was certainly voted the best student life out of all universities.
Right.
And I think it still holds that sort of phenomenal title.
But it's not very good for sports if you spend.
It's very good for sports. Very good for sports. Very, very, very strong on rugby, as you can imagine, being in Wales. But I was a big rugby player and cricketer, and it's good for cricket as well.
I saw it. These are two of your hobbies, actually, watching cricket and playing cricket and watching rugby.
Well, I used to be a very, very big sportsman, and so I used to play cricket a lot, and played. Obviously, my dad's from Yorkshire, so it's in the blood to play cricket. So I was always played cricket all my life and played to a very strong club standard.
I live 5 minutes far from Lord's Cricket Ground.
I'm a member of the MCC.
Wow. But I've never been for a game.
Well, you're French and probably not allowed, and it would be too complicated to explain.
I visited it,
it is beautiful.
But
it's
I
beautiful.
never went for a game because I don't think I would stand the whole.
Well, it's a 5-day test match.
Exactly, no, it's not
which is very hard for anybody to understand how it can last 5 days and still end in a draw. So I won't even try to sort of educate that.
So it was a good experience about Wales.
Wales was fantastic, and certainly it's a brilliant university. And then I stayed on to do an MBA, so that got me started in the business sort of world, I suppose.
It's interesting you decided to do the MBA straight after your bachelor's degree.
Yeah,
usually
it is. Well, you say usually, but I did my MBA back in 1987.
Correct.
So actually, before many people who listen to this podcast were actually obviously conceived, sort of thing, I would imagine. But so the MBA was actually quite a new qualification in those times. I mean, with hindsight, certainly I would recommend people to go and do a couple of years in industry and then do the MBA. But at the time, it was a new qualification for the university, so I decided to stay on.
I did a rather similar thing than you, in the sense that I finished for me it was a master's degree actually in France, and then I went straight to Bocconi Business School to do a master's degree in finance and economics. I had graduated first in law and business law, then finance and economics. But when I was there at the master's degree for MEM, it was called at the time, from da Bocconi, I noticed that most of my fellow students who had actually already 3 or 4 years of experience under the belt. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
It was a challenging year for
me. It is, no. I mean, with hindsight, it's better to do some time in the commercial world and then do your MBA. But as I say, back then it was a new course, and in fairness, it stood me in good stead, because I went on from that and then joined the graduate training scheme at Mars Confectionery. So probably one of the best graduate schemes, in the UK.
Wonderful. But what about your experience in 86, 87, where you were a contractor for milk marketing board?
You have done your homework. So basically, as part of my MBA, I had to work for a company at the same time. So I worked for the milk marketing board, and I worked. Then actually, it was all about 2 projects. One was exporting from England and Wales to Italy. So looking at milk and other products and dairy products. And the other one was the launch of real ice cream, because back then ice cream wasn't exactly it wasn't the ice cream that we have now, the dairy ice cream. It was more sort of with preservatives and all sorts of things. So they were looking at that point in time.
What, you mean in the UK?
In the UK, yeah. Looking to bring in a higher quality of
You needed more Italians. More Italians to bring some proper ice cream.
Probably, yeah.
Right. So indeed, I saw that you really had like an extensive experience in the food manufacturing industry as a sales person or as a marketing person.
Correct.
Starting as
so basically,
board and then onboarding.
And then Mars Confectionery. So I was at Mars for about 5 years. So that's 1988 to 92, 4 years, and I started off in, basically part of the graduate training scheme, but I was in sales, so earned my sort of spurs, as it were, in sales. So this was territory sales. I was responsible for various sort of sales territories, certain customers like CTNs, and then impulse retailers, and then I sort of moved into new trade channels. So I was responsible for getting confectionery into Wembley Stadium, and this is actually quite interesting, because if you think of it, you think, well, why on earth wasn't Wembley Stadium stocking confectionery before? But the interesting thing is that
for supporters, right?
For supporters, but it's all about.
Is it cold out there when you?
Well, it's not only cold, but it's sort of when you think about something like a trade channel, like as a stadium, there's only a certain period of time that the supporters can purchase items. So obviously they would gladly buy Mars bars, before a game in the interval. But obviously the stadium wanted to maximise that amount of spend and that time, so they weren't actually keen on stocking Mars bars, because it meant if somebody was spending at that point in time 50 pence on a Mars bar, they wouldn't be spending £3 on a burger. So basically, it was really understanding those interesting points about that retail channel, and was able to turn that round and actually introduce sharing confectionery, so large Maltesers, M&Ms, and so on. So actually,
vending machines. Then?
They weren't in vending machines. They were in the very small kiosks.
Oh, okay.
And also, what's interesting, it was things like how you actually paid, because in those days you paid cash.
Right.
So things had to be certain price points, and that those price points couldn't be then easily compared with the retail market, the normal retail market outside. So we ended up producing special large containers of Maltesers and M&Ms to sell into those sorts of outlets. So it was a really interesting place to cut your teeth in sales, really.
Sure. And also to adapt your offer to the needs of this particular
It was
market.
all about listening to the customer there, listening to the needs of the buyer.
Were they already doing the mega concerts that they now?
They were doing,
they're
doing massive concerts, they were
at
doing,
the time, already.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then
actually, just also out of that, another really interesting claim to fame is I was involved in the launch of Mars ice cream, and that actually transformed the ice cream landscape in the UK as we did it, because before that point there were choc ices which weren't proper chocolate and they weren't proper ice cream, and then Mars came along with a premium ice cream chocolate, and it just revolutionized the ice cream market. So that's my claim to fame. That was about 1990, I should imagine.
Right, and the ice cream market was still very much.
It obviously was ice cream, but they were called choc ices for a very good reason, because they weren't chocolate, they weren't proper ice cream.
Okay, and how is it working out of Slough? Or do you say Slough or Slough? Because it doesn't sound really. Slough. It doesn't sound really exotic. But
no, it's not.
You were on the move a lot.
It's not exotic. So those days I was working from home because I worked. I managed territories. So my first territory was North East London, and then then in places in East Anglia and all sorts of places.
So
but
you didn't have to be based in Slough.
You went to the office maybe twice a month, something like that. I suppose.
Wow, good on Mars to already be doing some sort of hot thing.
Yeah. But it was field sales, so you were expected not to be out in the field on the road, as it were. I mean, my office was my car back in those days.
And then you moved on to another big food manufacturing company, and specialised also in consumer foods product, which at the time was called
Rank Hovis McDougall.
Rank Hovis McDougall. So I recognise Hovis because they do the bread thing, the sliced bread, which I see in my local Tesco. But apparently they don't only do flour.
No,
products.
they do many. It's a very British company. So basically, products like Paxo stuffing and sacks of salt and Bisto gravy, and I think they did Robertson's jams back then. Wow. So a whole host of sort of Atora, suet sort of products. What
was it, Atora?
Atora suet. So it's actually
it's a brand.
It's what you make suet puddings from. It's a meat-based product that you put into baking and so on.
Must be a
dumplings.
Proper UK
Being French, you've never had the delights of a suet pudding.
Probably not. Okay, and I was wondering what attracted you to this food consumer sector.
I don't know. I think in those days, I mean, it's really interesting to sort of compare. The 80s, as it were, to perhaps graduates going into work now, because back in the 80s, there weren't startups. It didn't exist. The career progression, the advice you always received at university careers was, why don't you become an accountant? And of course, nobody wanted to become an accountant. And so then there were obviously what was called the milk round. So lots of big corporates would come to each university and try to attract graduates. And then, of course, the reality was that, what all graduates wanted was to get onto a graduate training scheme. And I was, very pleased for a multinational. I mean, the aspiration was never to sort of get involved into entrepreneurship. It was really to join multinationals to get very well, trained. I mean, it seems very strange now because I see many, many young graduates who have no aspiration whatsoever to join multinationals.
But there was also, around 10, 15 years after you, there was another trend, which is Generation X, which is my generation, where actually graduates wanted to find positions in banks and in finance companies, and working on the stock market, etc. And that's what happened to me, because I got recruited by Dressner, Klein and Benson were on campus at Staboconi when they were doing all their So so that was supposed to be the golden route back then. So I put on hold my lawyer program, like my becoming a fully qualified lawyer and stuff, and instead I went working in the City of London 2 or 3 years as an M&A analyst.
Oh wow!
Okay, so thanks for explaining the context, which
Yeah, I mean, it's...
in your time after university for you, it was like the golden route, like
pretty much,
la voie royale, as we say in French, the royal route.
Yeah.
And now you're right. I think that it's really not attractive. Graduates are not interested in joining mega multinationals, and
which I think is a shame, by the way.
They want to be Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, Greta Thunberg. God help us. Yeah, but anyway. Yeah.
Right, and you did have a brief stint in consumer healthcare.
No, okay. So basically, I was at Rank Hovis at McDougall for I can't remember how many years, but a number of years, probably
3.
Was it 3 or 4 years, something like that?
Yeah,
I can't. But basically, then I so I was moving up the sales, ladder, as it were, hierarchy. So I went from sort of territory sales into sort of sales management, and then into basically national sales management and major account management. So I joined then SmithKline Beecham as a national account sales manager, and that was the sort of products there. Initially, I was responsible for were Lucasade and Ribena and Horlicks. And my accounts were
sort of not food products, but
drinks.
Beverages.
I mean drinks. Yeah.
Okay.
So soft drinks, and then Horlicks.
Not
obviously.
drugs.
Not drugs.
Mm-hmm.
But it was part of the consumer health group. I mean, they did have at the time Aquafresh toothpaste and Panadol and other over-the-counter medicines, but they had a drinks division as well. So that's the sort of more logical area that I slotted into, and then I actually then got promoted into the broader group as basically a channel manager. So I had a team of national account managers reporting into me. So then I had the wonders of products like the toothpaste and the paracetamols and the smoking cessation, whatever. So certainly not fast moving consumer goods, but still consumer goods basically.
Yeah. Great. And I mean, for me, it's even if it's not sexy, as long as it sells, and it's a cash cow, because everybody will always need some toothpaste. I think this is a great option as well.
Yeah.
Especially, in the 1990s, 2000. I mean, was that not the sector where everyone was in recession or something? Anyway, I think sometimes when the times are hard, it's good to work for cash cow products.
Yeah.
And then, so when did you start working in the startup seed
and
VC sphere?
Okay, so basically, I was in that big multinational kind of FMCG world for about 15 years.
Yeah.
I guess always along that journey, I was always a bit of a frustrated entrepreneur. Certainly really enjoyed my time at the likes of Mars Confectionery, absolutely fantastic company.
Isn't it American?
Well, it's the Mars brothers are American, but they obviously
Swiss.
No, there's no Swiss angle to it. No.
Okay.
So it's kind of American. It's a family-owned business, so I guess you could say it is American sort of owned, really.
Oh.
But it was started. Obviously it was launched into the UK in about 1930s, I believe.
Oh, that's it.
But met the Mars brothers. I mean, two incredible people, really, sort of thing.
Wow.
I don't know if they're still alive. I don't think they are now. But anyway, so having been in that world for about 15 years, a little bit of a frustrated entrepreneur. I was then caught up in the merger between SmithKline and GlaxoSmithKline, which then put everybody's careers on hold for about 2 years, because there was a merger that took place, and then there was the sorting out of amalgamations, and effectively everybody's careers got put on hold. And
Post-merger cleaning.
Yeah, and at that point, I'd been in my role then about 4 years. And like all, anybody, you get frustrated if you're just, after 4 years, you want to be doing something else. And I always remember, it's a very, very interesting story, but some bright spark in the marketing department thought, well, what the company needs to cheer everybody up is trying to bring a little bit more sort of innovation and sort of enthusiasm into the company. So they started organising a number of sort of outside speakers to come in. And one of the outside speakers events that I attended was a guy called Simon Woodruff, who was the founder of Yo Sushi.
Okay.
Now you'll remember he became one of the dragons, one of the original dragons and all these sorts of things. But anyway, he then told his story about how he founded Yo Sushi. And it's actually quite interesting because he started off life as
I like them. I don't know if they exist yet.
Well, they still exist. They still exist. I don't know if they and they were basically it was obviously a conveyor belt sushi restaurant. Yeah. They were the first in the UK. So how did that come about? Well, he was a roadie in the music industry, and he was in Japan, and he was in a sushi restaurant with conveyor belts, and he thought, oh, this is pretty cool. And then he thought, how on earth could I start one of these up in the UK? And he went on the internet back then or whatever and found a guide how to start your own conveyor belt sushi restaurant. And then he just told his story about how he founded this startup, and it was basically loads of blagging and loads of great tips for any startup. So one of the things he said was that he wrote off to Yamaha, I believe, and said to Yamaha, I'm starting a chain of restaurants, and could I basically hire, or could I look to purchase some of your little mopeds, because we're going to use them to drive around the sushi. And of course Yamaha thought, well, that's fine, okay, well, you can use them for a weekend or something.
What do you mean drive around the sushi?
Well, for just to get people who ordered sushi to get a delivery at home and these sorts of things.
Ah, right, in the streets, not in the shop. Okay.
Yeah. So obviously Yamaha, thought nothing of it. Here's a few bikes for the weekend. But then, interestingly, he wrote off to All Nippon Airways and said, Yo Sushi, sponsored by Yamaha, would you be interested in sponsoring, our new sort of Japanese-themed restaurant in the UK? And I think All Nippon Airways said, well, if Yamaha are involved, we'll gladly sponsor you, sort of thing. And it was basically a story for about an hour and a half of all these sorts of wonderful anecdotes.
What did he mean by sponsoring? Like investing in the business?
Investing, paying, marketing, promotions, all sorts of things.
Really? Mm-hmm.
And coming out of this then meeting, the whole idea was to put more innovation into the sales and marketing teams, but all it really spurred on was that all those people that were on the cusp of thinking, I've had enough of the big corporate world, I'd like to start my own company, literally just handed in their notices the next week. So
really?
So I then handed in my... There was an opportunity at the time to take a good redundancy scheme.
Sounds like a bit impulsive, though.
It was very impulsive,
a bit
but
of a reaction there.
Well, no, but it was because basically the whole, as I mentioned, everyone's careers were on hold for a couple of years. There were options of good redundancy packages if you wanted to not hang around. So basically, I'd been in that world for 15 years. I'd always been a frustrated entrepreneur.
Did you take the job?
I took a nice redundancy package. And then I looked to start up my own Café Jouet proposition, really, which I knew nothing about at the time.
I was about to ask. Right, that was pretty ballsy. Excuse my French. And so Café Jouet, because I didn't find any information on. So what was the? Was that a restaurant?
Yeah. So let me kind of explain. So
2 years?
So at the time. I had two very small children. They were probably...
I was about to say, what did his wife say?
They were.
I'm going to take a package.
Yeah, they were about 3 and 4, I think, at the time. My wife works for TK Maxx, wonderful retailer. So she was a full-time job as well. So anyway, I took a nice redundancy.
I had your bets.
Yeah, I had a nice cushion of a reasonable amount of time. So. We were spending a lot of time basically we always lived in London since university, and we took our small children to these indoor play concepts, and the idea is that many people who have got kids out there.
What, like a kindergarten?
Well, they're more than that. So this is a sort of at a weekend and a birthday party type of thing, and basically they're typically like warehouses that the kids love because there's slides and ball pits and climbing apparatus and wonderful sort of things that they can go and immerse themselves in.
Right.
And then basically, at the time in the market, there was then nothing for the parents other than really poor quality plastic chairs and,
Yeah,
ter-
because
and
in a
terrible
warehouse there's not
and
much to
terrible
do.
coffee. So my concept, having attended these places many times and seen the real
Where
joy.
are they? Are they in the centre of London?
Well, so this was what the opportunity was, because basically I was going to these places that were in grotty warehouses in London. But looking round, you could see there was an accountancy partner, there was a legal partner, there was
among the parents.
Exactly. There was very wealthy people, but literally cringing on the plastic chairs.
You bet.
So my concept, Café Jouet, was basically to do exactly the same, but obviously more for the parents, so more of a paradise for parents. So it was an upmarket indoor play concept. Now, I knew nothing about writing a business plan. I knew nothing about raising finance. I knew nothing about starting a business. So I then embarked upon that whole journey with that concept in mind. And then about, I suppose, 18 months later, I'd secured £750,000 of investment. I got basically, back in those days, you could get a small firm's loan. So there was a £150,000 unsecured loan. I got private investors and I got VC investment. But what became interesting was that...
But hell, this adventure went on for 2 years, so...
Well, no, let me... So the process lasted probably about 18 months.
Okay.
The reality was, unfortunately, my claim to fame is that I successfully raised £750,000,
okay,
but I returned the money because the property became the greatest issue. And this is...
It's very expensive.
Well, it's not only expensive, but for a startup with no track record in the industry and no sort of credentials, I thought it would just be a case of, I've got the money, here's the money in the bank, I can pay your rent. Yeah. But obviously if you're a landlord, you'd prefer to have a tenant like Pizza Express, who's been in business many years and has a strong covenant, rather than any other startup company without any sort of covenant. And that was very interesting, learning about the commercial property market, because...
So were you not able to secure a lease? I
secured many potential properties, but what became interesting is once you then had multiple shareholders, in terms of, I had a VC involved, I had a lead private investor, everybody had their say. And the reality is I had 6 months to secure the first premises, and we couldn't agree on the right premises. And we were looking for premises across London, but in very affluent areas. So things like Richmond, Highgate, Hampstead. I mean, the list is endless of the sort of types of places. But it had to be a property with leisure consent, which was hard to get. Property with nearby parking, which is hard to get. Property with 18-foot height, which is hard to get, and about 8,000 square feet in space as well. So the actual property side of things became a lot harder to achieve than the money. And I always thought raising the money would be the hardest thing.
That's probably interesting, because it shows that as a startup, perhaps you want to focus on gathering and developing your intangible assets rather than having brick and mortar assets and intangible assets. So that's and
it wasn't wasn't about purchasing.
Were you able to wipe the slate clean in terms of like returning the money?
Yeah. So
not having to file for bankruptcy.
So essentially, I never drew down the money.
Okay.
But one of my obviously co-founders of Envestors was Oliver Woolley. Actually was one of my advisors to part of the capital. And Oliver and I mean, he gave me the idea. He said, look, if you don't successfully launch this business, you and I now know more about starting businesses than the advice we'd ever received about raising finance. I mean, I had such poor quality advice about how to raise finance. It was only really when I met Oliver, who had been, an entrepreneur who'd started up his own business and successfully exited his business. So his advice was very, very pertinent about raising equity finance. And then my advice, having raised equity finance myself, we then realised that together we could bring to the market a very strong proposition, which was all about helping other early stage companies successfully raise equity finance.
So the Café Jouet experience was a great way.
It was a great way.
A network of strong potential colleagues and advisors in the
Well, and also I had to go
world.
through that journey of starting up a business, successfully securing finance, doing the whole thing for 18 months to give me the credentials to help advise other companies. I mean, I learned more in those 18 months than I did in the last 15 years of working at big corporates.
Oliver Woolley actually incorporated Envestors London Limited in April 2010, and you became a director of a business in May 2010.
Yeah, so we actually founded the business in August 2004 as a consultancy. So it was Investors LLP.
I see.
So we started off. There were four of us that founded the four original founders, and we ran it as a consultancy, as a limited liability partnership. And then in 2010. We switched to become a limited company. We actually sold the business in 2010 to an AIM-listed fund manager.
Which of a consultancy business from the LLP?
Well, we sold Envestors Limited to an AIM-listed fund manager, and then actually for about 2 years we were part of, which is the Braveheart Investment Group. PLC, and then basically about 2 years later we decided to take the business independent again, so we kind of extricated ourselves from that sale.
So you did a sort of management buyout?
We did a sale, then a sort of a buyout, basically.
Okay. Well, okay. Interesting.
And so
you've been at Investors for almost 20 years. Next year, birthday,
20 years
anniversary,
exactly
coming through.
Exactly.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah,
indeed.
And so this is where you were able to leverage all this experience for Crefovi in order to become a full-time advisor to entrepreneurs and startups who wanted to. So what's the concept of Investors in a nutshell? Yeah,
so we started off life as essentially a corporate finance advisory firm. We became regulated by the FSA back in 2005, and then obviously became the FCA. We built up our own private investor network, and essentially our whole reason to exist was to help high growth early stage companies raise equity finance from our network of investors, and we've raised over 150 million for about 500 odd companies, and we've had
since 2010
since 2005 basically, and we've had about 26 very successful exits along the way.
Can you name some?
The biggest exit is, in terms of probably monetary, it was a company called ChargeMaster. So they were electric vehicle recharging. They were one of the early pioneers into this market. We raised a total of £15 million of equity into that business from about 50 of our investors. And that business was sold to BP for about 130 million in about 2018. So that returned net profit to the investors of about 50 million.
Jeez.
So that was a nice return. One of our other great ka-ching. But the greater return, not monetary but multiples, was there's a company called Parking Eye, and they were automatic number plate recognition. We introduced the sort of seed capital of about 250,000. That was then sold to Capita for 50 million, and the investors that put in 250,000 made 77 times their money, which is quite astronomical.
Right.
Nice to have.
Yeah. So I mean, yes, those are the successes. I suppose there are also quite a lot of startups trying to not succeed. But all in all, do you think that this is a business which has a bright future ahead of it?
Well, so that was the core business that we did obviously for many years. In about 2014, we recognised the need to bring in technology to connect our investor base with our screened client companies. We couldn't find that technology, so we decided to build it ourselves. And right at the start of creating our own investment platform, we incorporated the opportunity to license that platform on a white label manner, and for those platforms then if they wanted, the licensee wanted to, could be connected to other platforms. So right from the beginning, we were building a network of networks.
So is that under the Envestors?
That's under the
umbrella?
Envestors. So the platform's called the Envestors platform.
Okay. Yeah.
And obviously, Envestors has its own sort of platform, but then there are many other white label, platforms using our technology.
Mm-hmm. So I was actually seeing in your latest annual returns that you filed last year in March. Earlier this year in March. That yes, your proprietary platform is actually valued, I think, at 65 grand.
It should be worth more than that. So we've invested considerable.
Cost or valuation around 65 grand. Yes, internally generated software development costs. Well, just for the year.
That's just for the year. That's just for the year. Yeah, I mean, we've invested sort of multiple millions of pounds into the platform, and at that point, really, once we started going down the route of creating software and licensing software, I guess we pivoted to become a fintech company ourselves.
I see. But is it successful?
Yeah, no, it's successful. It's successful, and I guess what that's moved on to. And this really then happened in 2019, is we then got involved with the startup and innovator visas categories, and we became appointed by the Home Office as an endorser for those visa categories. So essentially, we were assessing overseas nationals who wanted to bring innovative companies to the UK. We would assess, validate, and endorse those businesses, and then mentor those businesses and land those businesses into the UK. And
so you had direct contact. You have direct contact with the Home Office.
Yeah. So
to facilitate the granting of visas.
So startup and innovator visas, and then what became interesting is
do you still do this?
Well, what became interesting is that we were then one of 45 companies that had that accreditation. Mm-hmm. The Home Office realised that was far too unwieldy, having that many sort of numbers, and they then went to a tender process of wanting to just appoint 3 companies, and we went through the tender exercise, and we were appointed as one of the organisations that has the contract with the Home Office for what's called now the Innovator.
3 out of 45.
3 out of 45.
That's
and interestingly,
so are you still doing it?
Yeah. So this started in April 23. And so any innovator, anybody wanting to start an innovative business under the innovator route, has to go through one of the endorsers, and there are only 3, and we're one of ours.
Who are the 2 others?
The other 2 are a company called Innovator International, and then there's a consortium called UKES, UKES.
I'm not surprised. The Home Office is pretty tough.
Yeah, but what was interesting is the Home Office wanted a cloud-based solution for applicants to apply to, and for the Home Office to access the data in a secure, confidential way. So our platform was actually approved. It went through the Mercury Security Assessment, which is a 6-month painful exercise with the Home Office.
Sort of ISO.
Yeah, all of that kind of stuff, assessment. And cyber essentials and things. And so our platform is then approved, and we've adapted it for the Home Office use. So we're now...
You must have made the software developers very rich indeed.
So we get about 100 applicants a month. And,
from which part of the world?
They are globally, obviously. I guess the big chunk of them comes from the India, Pakistan, Middle East, China. Is probably the major.
Also Asia.
We've had a couple of French applicants, interestingly. And you can understand why. I'm not too sure why anybody, but they're all very attracted to come to the UK.
Well, London is great. When in my early 20s, I was so glad I would relocate to London. Coming back to the licensing business, though, I was wondering, so you said it was successful, and your company was successful as a licensor. Would you please let us know some of the licensees that you guys have?
There's people like Set Squared. There's...
What are they?
They're a university sort of spin-out, so they're one of the... They have a number of the UK universities as sort of like an umbrella organisation, and they're responsible for sort of spinning out technology from universities. and they have a collection of their own investors, and they have lots of obviously these companies and technology, and they need a way of essentially matching their propositions with investors
like
online.
A sort of broker page.
Yes, so it's a secure way. This is not crowd funding. It's just really a secure way of promoting investment propositions. Investors got to log in. They've got to be aware of things like the wealth warnings and the risks. And then obviously all the information is held confidentially. So there's multiple layers of access and controls and so on, as you can imagine.
So that's one of your licensees.
Yeah, and then there's many others, in the similar sort of field, really.
And so on investors.anniversary.com, there's also a section which relates to deals.
Yeah.
And
so interesting now. So some of those, and actually a lot of them, are from our licensees. So we now, as I mentioned, a licensee can, if they wish, connect to not only our investment platform, but potentially all the other investment platforms that we license. So there's a sharing of propositions, and then there's a sort of a monetization depending on, success fees can be charged and shared wherever the money is introduced from.
So this is the page which is called Deals.
Yeah.
Is basically a list of potential investments that one
potential investments that could invest into. Yeah.
Okay. I see actually that the consumer food businesses are quite prominent, with well-fruited and.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably because what we're looking at there is we have many different partners who are licensees, and they're sort of specialists in certain areas.
Okay.
I think that one is probably one of our partners who specialises in the food industry, is why that's coming up. Something.
Okay, and so investors, just to make it very tangible for our listeners, would go on the deals section of your website and would say, okay, well, today I feel like investing through on this particular company or startup, and let's apply. Is that how it works?
Yeah. I mean, the reality is, obviously, most of your listeners will know about the crowdfunding space, where you can invest, as little as £10 online. I guess what this is, the difference here is our investors and the investors of our licensee partners are all sophisticated high net worth individuals. So typically the minimum investment is probably £10,000. Yeah. With our investor base, it's £25,000. So the purpose of the platform is really the marketing and the access to all of the information, and then obviously we would recommend a potential investor to meet the company, to engage in Q&A, which they can do online. And then so typically most investment actually probably then happens offline rather than through the platform, but in terms of the formal pledging and the access to all of the information, all the data, it's all held online.
And so these investors, they probably do this for tax reasons, to lower their tax liabilities, right?
So what you're referring to there is the Enterprise Investment Scheme, which is obviously a fantastic UK tax break.
Which I think has been rolled over by the Chancellor of the Exchequer in this last
year. It's probably the best tax break of its kind in Europe, sort of thing. So so pretty much all of our UK companies, would qualify for EIS, and there's SEIS before that, so that's a level before which you can get. So it's not a reason to invest, but it's a reason to not invest if the company hasn't secured EIS, really, because it's obviously a tremendous tax break,
exactly,
which we could go on into, but maybe that's for another podcast and another. So
your investors sort of, I don't know if you can call it clientele, but at least group, is there a particular profile for them? Or
so
like a city chap?
There's probably four types. So there are the city
bankers,
the boys and girls who have probably got the bonuses and are looking to have a little bit of play money to an extent, and through EIS.
Has just been removed this year as well by the government.
So in fairness, that is a very active source of capital, and it has been. Then there's this.
Probably looking for the tax breaks. Those guys.
Yeah, no, that's solely looking for tax breaks. Then there are the, I guess the sort of the retired senior executives,
right,
who have access to capital.
Yeah.
This possibly is a little bit, again, play capital. It's capital they can afford to lose, but it's capital they probably enthuse the most about. They like talking to their mates on the golf course, enthusing on around a table with friends at a dinner party.
Want to keep a foot into the industry, so to
Yeah,
speak.
so possibly they might become non-execs.
Yeah.
They might become advisors. So they're that's a really nice investor.
Okay.
Then there's the sold-out entrepreneurs. Now
Right.
these probably are the the number one type of investors to secure, because
the likes of James Dyson and stuff.
Yeah, because they're proven, know how to start, build and exit a company, and they just love the cut and thrust, and they like to be just actively involved advising. And then I guess there's probably smaller ticket investors that might be looking for jobs, so a little bit more about sort of a job. So they might be saying, well, I'll invest if I can become a non-exec, sort of thing. So I'll invest to do your finance.
Because non-exec is a remunerated function.
Well, it can be. Sometimes it's not, sort of thing. But typically there might be a lot of, say, ex-finance people that might be saying, well, I can see you're weak on the finance area. I'll invest some money, but I'm looking for a job at the same time. So,
as a finance.
As a sort of CFO or something.
Manager for your company.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that fourth type of.
But so I guess there are 3 or 4 types of investors. We also have family offices, which is really good. I mean, family offices.
Really?
There are less in numbers. We've probably got about 80 of those.
Like a fifth.
I mean, they're much harder to sort of to nail down, but essentially fantastic source.
Are there many family offices in the UK nowadays?
They're probably, within our network, there's probably about 150, something like that, I suppose.
So they just manage trust funds for very rich people?
Well, it could be very wealthy individuals, and then they've obviously got people to deploy their wealth. But
what are we looking at the Russian oligarchs here? Are we looking at the...
Not anymore.
Thanks, that's the answer I was expecting. Old money British blokes?
No, it really does vary. There could be, again, sold out entrepreneurs who just employ small team of people to deploy wealth. There could be more established, long established family wealth.
Right.
And of course their appetites vary. Sometimes they are very enthused by very early stage. But interestingly,
do you know that the pension funds, the US pension funds, they have a portion of a asset that they allocate to VC investing,
really?
Which I think is baffling.
Okay.
A lot of universities, they have all these funds, university funds and pension funds.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
I don't think that a European pension funds and and university funds have that risk. The risk takers.
The problem that we've seen in the UK is that the VCs are no longer about risk. The vast majority of them will invest if you've got £1 million of recurring revenue.
But there are so many startups that fail, something like 90%.
Well, I know, and this is why the private investors, the business angels investors, are the ones that take the risk.
Oh, really?
So it is
early stage.
Yeah, I mean, it is very, very hard for an early stage company to secure VC investment. I mean, you'll be offered investment when you don't actually need the money, because you're then profitable, basically.
What's the expression? Family, friends, and fools.
Yeah, exactly. But exactly. But these.
Well, what I can tell you is that I set up my law firm 12 years ago, and it was all bootstrapping.
Well, that is the best way.
In Paris and London,
absolutely.
working on the business, my ass off, and day in, day out. Yeah, that's all I do.
That's exactly the attitude.
So I own shares. Yeah. I'm it's also in control. But it's tough. I think 99% of the people would never do this.
Well, that's
too hard.
But you have to do it.
Most people.
You have to do it, and you have to. I mean, I always tell a story. We had an entrepreneur.
No, because also another thing that, as I said, I used to be a banking and finance
right.
lawyer, and then I turned into becoming an advisor for the creative industry. So I had to completely develop the network of clients from scratch, right? So at the beginning, I was like attending all the basically the trade shows in all the music industry, film industry. I'm still doing that, of course, post-COVID. But it was a matter of life and death to actually develop a network.
No, it is, and you have to. It's this, sort of sweat equity and so on. So yeah.
So after 19 years developing Envestors Limited to its full potential through the corporate finance advisory,
not necessarily the full potential. We've still got a long way to go.
I was about to say, and now you mentioned. Sorry, there was something you mentioned.
Well, so we've secured this contract with the Home Office, which
that's right. Yes, the visas. So what's the next? I mean, firstly, are you happy with what you've achieved?
Yeah,
I saw that Simon Woolley has actually just sort of withdrew from the business. Is he still involved, or is
Oliver Woolley's still very much involved.
Sorry, Oliver. Yes,
Oliver's still very much involved.
Okay.
So Oliver and I, are the two founders that are still involved. Yes. Oliver's CEO and I'm COO sort of thing. No, Oliver's still very much involved. Okay. I mean, we're now looking. I guess we've been doing this a long time. We are looking to build upon the fact that our biggest, I think, feather in the cap is securing the Home Office contract for utilises our platform.
What did you say? The feather in the cap.
Feather in the cap.
That's a lovely expression.
Very British expression.
I'll go to sleep much more intelligent tonight. Feather in the cap.
Feather in the cap.
Is it because of the obvious
to
tender
build
process?
Yeah, I mean the tender process was 1,000 pages. I mean it was like we were tendering to build a warship.
Goodness.
And quite rightly so, really. And we, completely threw ourselves into it and secured it. But it was more the fact that we're so pleased that our platform has been, Home Office approved and went through what's called Mercury Security Assessment, which is 6 months of complete pain, but for the right reasons. And I think we're looking for other global markets to take a lead from Britain in that. So we're looking to sort of globalise our services and software offerings.
So you want to do some sort of scaling up?
Yeah.
Lovely. And so you still get excited?
I'm very excited.
Interacting with your team, with all your...
Yeah, we have a fantastic team, a lot of, young graduates, and we're delighted that, going back to my time of... my path was on the multinational career. I mean, I'm thrilled to pieces that
investment managers.
They're called. They start off as investment executives and then investment managers. But we have a number of 2 or 3 out of Oxford and Cambridge and other good quality universities. Hopefully, we'll get one out of Aberystwyth again soon. We've got a great team.
What do they work entail as investment managers exactly?
So we have a growing team that's responsible for the visa side of the company. Okay. So essentially, they are assessing innovator visa applications. So assessing against the criteria of is this business innovative, viable, and scalable.
Guys from India, Pakistan, China, and some from
and then going through 2 from France. So going through the whole, it's a sort of 4-week kind of screening process, and then if those businesses are then if they secure visas, if we issue endorsement, they secure visas, we then have a duty to monitor and to report on those businesses, and then also we can provide ancillary sort of an optional advice, guidance, mentoring. So the team are very much account managing applications through to grant a visa and then basically through to establishing a business in the UK. Okay. We have 50 service partners who we can introduce businesses to so that's banks, accountants, lawyers, a whole host of organisations,
we joined
including yourselves.
We're
delighted to have you on board.
Michael, yes, thank you. Although at the moment I haven't worked.
Too busy podcasting.
No, actually, I was contacted by one of your investment managers, Joel, senior investment manager, but the lady was from Nigeria, was not interested in spending money on finding a patent. So it was her choice.
Okay.
And so what, for example, does Michael do as a deal origination lead?
Yeah, so Mike is responsible.
He's very nice, actually.
So he's actually sort of wearing 2 hats. So he's still responsible for this was perhaps the older part of the business, which is companies coming to us looking solely just to raise equity finance.
Right.
So we'll still take on some of those companies, but also he's now involved in growing our service partners. So he's sort of basically head of partnerships.
Yeah, he said he was very involved as well in developing the proprietary platform.
Yeah, the platform, selling the platform, and also then building the community. And we have an additional community platform for all of our entrepreneurs.
How's that going?
That's going great guns.
Yeah.
I mean, we as I say, we have about 50 odd clients, new. There's between 80 and 100 each month, and then our track record at the moment has probably been able to issue endorsement for between 40% of those, I suppose. So
what does it mean? So where is it, for example, on the website that you can see this?
Well, so I'm talking about the Visa endorsement. So we have a separate Visa endorsement platform.
Yeah.
So the platform you're looking at there is our sort of standard, sort of if you're a UK company looking to.
So that's investors.investry.com.
Yeah. So if you're a UK company looking to raise equity finance, you can come onto our platform.
And which one is the other one for the Visa?
The other is Visa endorsement. Investors. The Investors Visa endorsement, or investors-visa-endorsement.co.uk. So this is the platform.
This is where you're seeing the growth.
Yeah. This is what the Home Office utilise. They all have access, and this is if you're an innovative, entrepreneur looking to, come to the UK under the innovator visa, and also if you're a scale up or a potential scale up in the UK and you want to employ overseas nationals, we have the right to assess your business, endorse your business, and that means your business can employ overseas nationals. So.
And this is why the French blokes have to do that, because with Brexit now they have to apply.
Exactly.
To the Home Office.
Yeah, so that's what any European who wasn't here before before Brexit would have to come under one of these sort of visa routes. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, and you think this is where the growth is?
Well, I think it really plays to our strengths of obviously considerable expertise about advising early stage companies on how to establish and grow in the UK, particularly raising finance. Then there's the layer onto that, the investment platform sort of expertise, the fact that it's then been approved for use by the Home Office.
Second stage, then they are.
So we're looking to sort of sell technology and services.
Because you're doing the whole supply
to
chain.
other countries around the world who have similar visa immigrations.
The other platform, the visa platform as well.
Well, to other countries who are looking to do similar sort of thing, really, because this is probably leading technology in the world, really.
There's this great podcast that I've listened to thrice, actually, because I wanted to be up to the job. From the FT, which is why companies don't want to list in the UK anymore.
Yeah.
And which in a nutshell says that in the aftermath of discovering that Robert Maxwell had ploughed the funds of the pension funds of his companies, his media conglomerates, in order to actually inflate the price of its stock, of its shares, accounting rules changed in the UK around 10 years or 15 years ago, and therefore that was one of the reasons why the UK stock exchange became much less attractive to companies, and now a lot of them are just listing in the US. No questions asked. So how is that? Do you think how is that impacting your business? Because you are doing all the groundwork to prepare all these seeds and then startups and then SMEs to get to scale, and then when they are ready to do like the big thing and also rip off the benefit, then bang, they go and do a listing in the US and on the NASDAQ or in the
What they tend to do is to they exit via trade sale rather than listings. So the reason why
to private equity funds.
To just other large corporates. So for example, Chargemaster were going to list, and they were going through the whole broker exercise of listing. They then had an offer on the table of 138 million or something. They decided to take that there and then, sort of thing. I think the reality about listing...
Who wouldn't?
Exactly, who wouldn't? The reality about listing is most private investors wouldn't take the... if they saw a business plan and we talked about the exit is going to be by listing, they wouldn't take that seriously unless the founders of the company had previous listing experience. Because it is a very complex area, nobody quite knows how to do it, and obviously if you list on AIM, you don't quite know whether that's going to be liquid, where you can sell your shares.
Exactly.
Whereas,
that's exactly what it says in this podcast.
Exactly.
That basically the companies which are listed in the UK at the moment are not very attractive, not sexy. It's like mining stuff, insurance and banking. But the excitement is in the US.
My advice to all entrepreneurs starting businesses wouldn't be to necessarily look at stock market listings unless you can surround yourself with a chairman and a non-executive team who have listed.
But this is definitely a route if your startup is based in the US, in the Silicon Valley.
It certainly is a route, and obviously there are many Facebook examples of they're phenomenal. But but the more obvious and the more sort of viable route, and the one that if you're trying to secure money on the basis of that's my potential exit, that investors will believe the most, is trade sales.
Trade sales, like acquisitions.
Exactly. That will give more comfort to when you're earlier stage. But clearly, if you know what you're doing, if you have listed before, you believe the business has the potential to list, and it's a liquid sort of stock market where then your shareholders can sell shares, then obviously it makes sense. But
actually, I must thanks. It's an interesting perspective, because I must say what they say in this FT podcast. I've also noticed it in my portfolio of shares, which all my shares based in the UK since I'd say 3 or 4 years ago of the COVID crisis, they're still not recovered.
No, exactly.
And so I can't sell them because I would be doing a massive capital loss. But and it's still not recovering. So while shares which are listed, of course, in the US or in continental Europe have somehow recovered much better. So it seems to be okay. Great. Well, that's all for my questions, really.
Good. Well, hopefully the readers, the listeners, the viewers, which there aren't any, have enjoyed the conversation, which has been thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah, thank you, likewise. As you might have guessed, I had a great time speaking with Scott. He is a very entertaining and also dynamic person with a dry sense of humor, which is a typical British sense of humor, which I really like. So this is it from us at Crefovi. Do leave a review or like us on YouTube, on various social media apps, tweet about us, and also rate us on LinkedIn and stuff. And I'll see you at a next show or live webinar. It was a pleasure. Bye everyone.